Hi, I'm Bob, and welcome to Between the Sheets, where we look at Microsoft Excel and related technologies. In a previous video, I tested Microsoft Copilot's ability to solve Excel problems and write formulas. Honestly, the results weren't great, but Microsoft has put a lot of work into it, and Copilot is now integrated into Excel and the other applications in Microsoft 365. So, with just a few clicks and writing simple prompts, Copilot can analyze data for us. And this is really software. It isn't beta anymore. But it depends on a lot of remote moving parts all working properly, so it can sometimes be a little glitchy. So let's take a look and see how it works. For Copilot to be active, the file has to have autosave enabled. And you can see I've got that turned on up there. For that to happen, you need to have the file saved in a Microsoft cloud service like OneDrive or SharePoint. So if the file is just on your local machine, you'll need to do a save as and save it in the cloud. There are a few ways of activating Copilot. Sometimes just when you click a cell, you might get a little small Copilot icon, but not always. This file is a typical record of product orders, and you can see order number, name, state, and all the rest of that. So I'm going to make sure that I am clicked somewhere inside the data set, and I'm on the Home tab of the ribbon bar, and off towards the right, I've got this icon there for Copilot. So let me go and click that. Now, if you don't see that icon, and you're sure you're running Microsoft 365, you probably just need to update it. So clicking Copilot, you see, creates this little panel here on the right. And what you see here may be different from one time to the next. And sometimes it gives you great suggestions, and sometimes, well, maybe not. Like it's asking me if I want to split columns of column A. that doesn't really make a lot of sense. If column A was maybe first name and last name together, that would make sense. I really have no idea what this is thinking of. So what I want to know is how much the orders for Java were to California. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down into this box and I'm going to type a prompt. So if I were going to do this manually, I would use the SUMIFS function. Let's see what Copilot will do. So scroll, okay, yeah, there's SUMIFS, and that's good. So what I'm going to do is I say, okay, this looks fine. So I'm going to click here where it says Insert Row. And it does it. And when I click on that cell, I can see there's SUMIFS. Now, also, if I were doing this myself, I would create range names. It didn't do that, but that's okay. And we can see that's fine. But still not perfect because look what the label is. The label is just saying total. So that's something that I could adjust manually. So I could go and call this total Java sales. I think that's a minor issue. So let me scroll back up to the top, and over in Copilot, I'm going to scroll back up to the top. Now, I'd like to get a pivot table, and sometimes this suggests a pivot table, sometimes not. So even if I click around inside the data set, these are not changing. Now, this does have an option of showing data insights. So let me click that and see what we get. So this is fine. This is giving me a graph. That's great. You notice there is this option here, get deeper analysis results using Python. I'm going to do that later, but since there's no suggestion here of pivot table, I'm going to click in that box and I'm going to say create a pivot table. So let me scroll up. Okay, looks like a pivot table to me, and you see there's this option, add to new sheet. So I'm going to click that, and down the bottom here you see it's created a new sheet. Let me zoom in here a little bit. So it's just a small rudimentary pivot table. And you notice there's still Copilot on the right, but when I click inside the pivot table, the Copilot panel goes away and I've got a regular old pivot table field list, just like if I had created it myself. And I could modify it. So for example, let's say I want to filter by state. I'll take state and I will drag that into filters, and there it is. And I can go and do all the regular filtering that I would normally do. So let's say I want to see maybe California and Florida, let's say. We want to look at big states. And there we go. So I could modify this just like a regular pivot table. Now, if I want to get back to Copilot, I just go back to the Copilot worksheet. I'm going to ask it to create a pivot chart based on the pivot table it created. So let me go in there. So I'm going to ask it for a pie chart. Let's see what happens. Okay, it tells me it created a pivot chart. Now it says add to new sheet, so it's not going to add it to the existing sheet, but that's okay. I could move it if I want. So let me click that. And you notice what it did. It created another pivot table, just like the pivot table it had before. So I could go and modify it if I want to go, just drag state into filters. And now I've got this chart. But you notice this is not a pivot chart, right? Because when I click it, if this were a pivot chart, I would have some of the pivot features here, some of the drop downs and all that. And if I go back here to sheet 1, there's the original pivot table. Now, if I want to create a pivot chart on my own, I could do that. So I'm going to go to the Insert tab. By the way, you may notice this has been moved. Pivot charts used to be in the Pivot Table Analyze tab of the ribbon bar. It's no longer there. They decided to put it in the Insert tab along with all of the other charts. So I'm going to go Pivot Chart and grab a pie and OK. And there it is. So there is a pie chart. And this is a pivot chart because you can see we've got all the little drop downs and things that you would normally get. So I'm going to go and rename these sheets with something meaningful. I'll just call this like maybe PT1, and I'm going to call this PT2 chart. So let's go back here. And this item, get deeper analysis using Python. So let me click that. And this is giving me a little bit of information of what are the things that it can do. So I'm ready to get started. Yeah, I'm going to click Start Advanced Analysis. So it gave me some information, but not really a lot. This is just kind of extracted. So this is asking me if there's a specific type of analysis that I want. If I do, I can click in there. And here it gives me some suggestions. So analyze sales by state or variety. So I'm going to click that. And it gives me a little bit more information. It offers to create a bar chart, so let's do that. And this is a Python chart, so I cannot modify this chart like a regular chart in Excel. When I have it selected, you notice up on the ribbon bar there is no chart tab. It's picture format. It thinks it's a picture. I'm going to ask it for a summary, so I'll click in the box, and I'm going to ask it. So here it gave me a good general summary. I'll zoom in here a little bit more. So you can see it gives me like count, unique values, top frequency, mean, and giving me some percentiles. And you notice some of these cells are labeled NaN, not a number. Those are calculations it decides not to do because they just don't make sense to do it. So it just puts that in there. So I know that it's not just forgetting to do it. So it doesn't have just blank cells. And I could go on and on with this as much as I want. But here's something really important. You'll notice that everything it did was non-destructive. This Python analysis it gave me was on a sheet. The pivot table, second pivot table and chart was on a new sheet. This pivot table was on a new sheet. Oh, now it decided to take that chart and make it into a pivot chart. I guess it just kind of changed its mind. And when I go back to the original sheet, you notice this is all unchanged. I'll go down to the bottom. It added that total sales that we did at the beginning down on bottom, but the original data set is unchanged. There is one other way to run Copilot. I'm just going to close it here by clicking that X. You might be familiar with the quick analysis tool that appears when you select multiple cells. So like if I do something like that, there's that little button there. So I'm just going to click there. Actually, let me delete this row here. So I'm going to click in there and I'm going to press Control A to select all the cells in this data set. So there's the quick analysis button down there on bottom. And I'm going to click it. And you may be familiar with seeing this before, but here's something new. get more suggestions from Copilot. And when I click that, look what happens. It launches Copilot and it still has memory of everything that it did for this file just before. So Copilot is working a lot better than it was when I tested it last year. But it's new, and you see it still needs a little bit of tweaking. Test it with your own data and see what happens. So be sure to check out my course, Excel 365 for Busy People. Until next time, my name is Bob, and this has been Between the Sheets.